Hello and welcome to Material Girls, a pop culture podcast that uses critical theory to understand the zeitgeist. I'm Marcelle Cosman.
And I'm Hannah McGregor. And insert air horn noise, we have a guest. Ruth Ormiston, pronouns they, them, is a book designer, cultural worker, and recovering English major. Aren't we all? They have an MA in English literature from the University of Victoria, where they specialize in late 19th century children's publishing, and a Master of Publishing from Simon Fraser University. Welcome, Ruth.
Hi,
Hey.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yay, welcome, Ruth.
Thanks.
So excited to talk about this game that I downloaded in order to play and then was like, I'm too old. I don't know how to make my mouse work.
It is hard on the MacBook.
This game was not made for a trackpad.
No, not at all.
So before we get into the Sims of it all, I thought maybe we could talk about other games that we played as kids. What video games you remember playing as a kid? Ruth, other than Sims, what else were you playing?
Well, I was into a lot of sim games, just in that genre.
Yeah.
So there was this one called SimTunes that my brother and I were absolutely obsessed with. It was by Maxis, who also produced The Sims, I think. But it was you played as these little bug instruments, and then you would paint melodies on the screen, and then you would place the little bugs, and they would travel over the screen and play music.
That's cool as hell.
I know.
So
yeah.
cool.
I don't know how they came up with that idea. So that I was really into as a little kid. I was 5 or 6 playing SimTunes. And then I was also really into Zoo Tycoon. I was a huge Zoo Tycoon kid. I had expansions. I was I'm getting a 5-star zoo. I'm naming all my animals. I had a genealogy of giraffes and named them all.
A genealogy of giraffes.
Yeah.
What about you, Hannah?
I mean, we're older, so there weren't a lot of, I think, computer games
No.
in existence when we were little kids. But I do remember definitely having SimCity.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked SimCity because of the cheat codes. I really liked being able to build a city and then destroy it.
Yeah.
Make an earthquake happen, or you could make King Kong come. Or maybe Godzilla. I think it was Godzilla. You could make Godzilla come and stomp all over your city. So that was very fun to me as a child. But in the process of researching for this game, I also suddenly came back to this vivid memory of having a computer game. I think it was called Oni, O-N-I.
Okay.
But it was a game you were a purple-haired lady who was fighting people. And I definitely had a phase in my sort of queer youth where I really wanted to be a hot lady on the video screen who punched a lot of people. That was very exciting to me.
I love that.
What about you, Marcelle? What were you playing?
Our computer was black and white, and I used to play both Space Invaders. You've got your arrow keys, your up, side to side, and down keys, and then your space bar. Space bar was shoot. So I would play that a lot.
Heck yeah.
Or I would play a very ancient early version of Prince of Persia, which was just 8-bit kind of the person is running, they're jumping over these tall things, trying to get through these sharp-jawed closing doors. I died every time at the exact same spot. But the thing that I remember being so remarkable about these games is when we got a color computer and realizing that these games were in color.
Whoa!
You're what? The blood is red. So when you die in Prince of Persia, the blood is red.
It's not great.
It's not. It was wild. It's time for Why This, Why Now? The segment that asks the materialist question, what are or were the historical, ideological, and material conditions for our object of study to become zeitgeisty?
And today we are talking about The Sims, the record groundbreakingly popular video game franchise created by Will Wright and Electronic Arts. Will Wright became a big deal when he created SimCity in 1989. Maybe it's obvious that it was the same person. I didn't know it was the same person, but it was. And then he created The Sims starting in 2000, and that was what really rocketed him to fame because The Sims was considered a really sort of groundbreaking game. So, Ruth, this was your proposed topic. Can you tell us a bit about what made The Sims such a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest reasons that it got so popular is because it attracted casual gamers. I feel like it had a relatively accessible entry point, both in terms of the software and then also the gameplay. You didn't need a console to play The Sims. If you already had a computer that was running, I think it was Windows 95, then you could play The Sims. And the basics of the game are pretty easy to pick up. I mean, obviously, as we'll talk about, it gets more and more complicated if you want it to be, but the general bare bones of the game, you can pick up pretty quickly. And I think that's also why a lot of kids played the games. They weren't really marketed towards kids explicitly, but all my friends and I were playing The Sims when we were 7.
It's not a hand-eye coordination game either, so that makes it also more accessible when you're a kid.
Yeah, you're just clicking, there's no time limit. You're not oh my God, I have to do this in 30 seconds or something's going to explode. It's the stakes are very low, I think. And yeah, I feel it's not action-based in the same way that a lot of the games that were popular at the time were, Pokemon or Zelda or Smash Bros. It's more the characters are reacting to the environment that the player builds. So I think that was kind of a unique selling point as well. And then, people talk about this a lot, but it also had infinite replay value. So, if you didn't like what was happening, you could just start over. And there were kind of infinite iterations of Sims that you could create and play with. So people describe it as being a toy more than a video game.
Oh, that's so interesting. So because I scripted this before I knew what you were going to say about the game, Ruth, we're going to play a little mini game within a game, which is how much does Ruth's explanation line up with that of media studies scholar and surprisingly my doppelganger, Tanya Sivonen? I don't know, Tanya, how to say your name, but I do know that we have a remarkably similar aesthetic.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really funny. So, Marcelle, could you please read Sivonen's theory about the ongoing success of the Sims franchise?
It would be my pleasure. Quote, "My hypothesis is that a large part of the Sims' appeal is based on the fact that it succeeds particularly well at functioning on the levels of both simulation and game. In addition to its toyish quality, its malleability as a digital text allows the players to practically select the functions, rule sets, of their own game and create the stylistic and thematic elements they want to play with. There is no one way of playing The Sims. Instead, I regard its play more like experimentation and tinkering with the available materials, playing with the game's capabilities, testing its boundaries, and developing gameplay goals incrementally." End quote.
I think that's basically what you said, Ruth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you both refer to it as being like a toy, right? Did you say toy?
I did say toy.
You did,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I sure did.
I did.
More like a toy than a game, right? And this flexibility, I think, is huge. It allows the game to attract a wide demographic across ages, as you pointed out, a demographic of skill levels in gaming and a wide demographic of what you find fun, because there really isn't just one way to play it.
Yeah. I love this idea of tinkering specifically with the game. I feel like that's not an approach to video games that's often talked about or considered. So
yeah.
I love that they bring that in.
Yeah, even I enjoy a lot of the things that you described as being fun about Sims or that made it more accessible, right? That it's not timed, it doesn't have these intense fight scenes or you're rushing or if you do something wrong, you're out. I like these sort of slow, cozy resource management games, but those still aren't tinkering games. Those don't have what's often referred to as the sandbox nature of The Sims.
Yeah.
So sandboxiness is a real central tenet of The Sims and how it works. But for all of that open-endedness, it's still a designed game, right? Like somebody made a whole bunch of decisions about what the game looks like and how you play it and what the logics of success are within it. And that means that it has particular ideas about how the world works coded into it, specifically of really strong orientation towards the accumulation of commodities. So I found a really interesting article by hilariously named collaborative duo Diane Nutt and Diane Railton, the Dianes. Their article is called The Sims: Real Life as Genre. And they argue that the model of life that The Sims is built on reflects, quote, fairly traditional capitalist and patriarchal values, end quote, with gameplay focused on acquiring goods, building relationships to enhance career opportunities and thus income, upgrading your lifestyle, and thus being able to acquire more fancier goods. Like that's how you succeed at The Sims, is you make money. And all of this happens in suburbia, in detached homes on private lots. So it's basically American capitalism, the game. And a lot of parents and teachers and game reviewers liked exactly that quality of it. Like it was praised for that.
Oh, creepy. We love capitalist indoctrination for kids.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
So to get a really good sense of how clearly the game is codifying particular notions of what a successful life looks like, I want us to watch the ad for The Sims 2 together.
Ooh, okay.
3, 2, 1, play.
That was beautiful.
All right. So, Ruth, could you describe for viewers what we just saw in that ad? And by viewers, I mean listeners, because this is an audio medium.
I will do my best. So the ad starts with a young male sim coming to life, I can assume.
Yeah, it's him, I think, moving from what The Sims looked like in Sims 1 to the new 3D design in Sims 2. So he's like
That makes sense.
bubbling out into 3D.
Yeah, I was so distracted by like the weird bubble passing through his body that
Really
I didn't
upsetting.
even think of that.
I know. That only occurred to me on like my 4th or 5th watch.
Yeah, so he's getting his Sims 2 body, and then there's like a montage to punk music.
Dun, 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 new generation.
Yeah, it sounds just like that. And it's like a montage of him getting rejected by a bunch of women.
Mhm.
And then finally, he is on a date, and the female sim just flashes him.
Mhm.
So that means that she's into him. And then it's like a montage of their life together. She loves to take her top off
Loved it.
Mhm.
in multiple stages of life, which we love.
Yeah, we get her titties 3 times.
Yeah.
Blurred out.
She does not nurse her child, though.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, the
That's
titties
not
are
what-
only exposed for sexual
Yeah, that's
reasons.
not what titties are for.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like them raising a family. Their kids grow up, turn into rowdy teenagers. Their kids get married. They grow old together. So it's kind of like walking prospective gamers through the different life stages that you can play in The Sims and develop these relationships. And like the kids are always lighting stuff on fire. There's a lot of fire in the ad as well.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I guess it's like emphasizing the linearness, I guess, of the gameplay that it's wants people to adhere to, but then also poking at like the fun that you can have, like lighting shit on fire and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like there's going to be opportunities for silliness and chaos within an overarching structure of like a linear life narrative. Marcelle, any first thoughts upon seeing that beautiful ad?
I don't know if Coach saw my face while I was watching it, but it was like it was the look
I
of
saw your face.
the
yeah.
look of horror the entire time.
Yeah.
Hearing the two of you talk about The Sims made me be like, oh, I'd love to play that. That sounds really fun. And then seeing this ad made me be like, nope, never. Not for me. No, thank you.
Oh, well, we might turn you back around on that.
Okay.
So my doppelganger, Sivonen, their book is called Players Unleashed.
Ooh.
And in that book, they describe how a lot of people praised The Sims when it first came out for how it, quote, instructs young children, girls in particular, about good housekeeping and the maintenance of social relations in the family, end quote.
What? If you told me that this game came out in 1956, I would be like, sure, That makes perfect sense. But it didn't. It didn't. We're talking about a game.
No, it came out, the first version came out in 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What the fuck?
The new millennium.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted. Please continue.
So part of why it was praised for like, this is a game that girls can play and that young girls can play and that like isn't violent and isn't going to teach them about violence. Because like, remember how worried we were in the early 2000s about games teaching people about violence?
We were.
This game doesn't teach you about violence. It teaches you about capitalism and household management. It's basically like an interactive dollhouse game with a gameplay structure that rewards choices like, for example, having one parent stay at home and look after the house while the other earns income. That's like a more effective way to play the game within the game's internal logics of success.
Okay.
But despite this ideological bent of the game, the whole like nonlinear sandbox game design thing allows for comparatively a huge amount of player autonomy. And what players do with that autonomy is really interesting. So Ruth, I'm going to ask you to read quite a long quote. This is the opening passage of Players Unleashed, the book that I have been referencing, which is all about the role of modding within game culture. And I think this really sets up our conversation effectively.
Okay. Quote, I still remember the day I learned how to kill my Sims. I recall having heard my brother complain about the Sim kids being a nuisance, as they were wasting the resources of the family, eating too much without producing anything tangible like money in return. Although they had been quite nice to have at first, in a loving couple eventually becoming a real family sort of way, I soon learned that they were a big hassle. The only reasonable way to deal with them was to get rid of them. So I set off to build pools, directed my Sim kids to take a dip, and then I removed the ladder, watching the little children exhaust themselves to death in the water. I ordered an irresponsible single mother to cook for her children without teaching her how to do it first, and soon enough, the whole kitchen was on fire. The first fire left behind a half-destroyed house with 3 dead bodies. And once I got a penchant for it, why would I have limited my destructive activities to kids only? Some Sims washed their hands too many times, turned on a light, and died of electrocution. Some starved to death or were abducted by aliens. It is evident that I did not only play The Sims by looking for different ways of killing the game creatures. However, it can be argued that experimenting with the game in this way opened my eyes for the hugely varied possibilities of play. I did not only torture my little homunculi to death, but I also learned to utilize all kinds of cheats, tricks, and hacks so I could create interesting scenarios in the game to amuse myself. End quote.
Beautifully read.
That's diabolical.
So, Ruth, tell us, how much does Sivonen's description of their chaotic, creative, and sometimes murderous relationship to their Sims align with your sense of the game?
I mean, it's very similar to how I have been thinking about The Sims this whole time. And like one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about it, partly because I think especially as a kid playing the game, like my friends and I, we were all about like, you know, the classic taking the ladder out of the pool, or, you
Classic.
know, once you discover woohoo, you're like making your Sims woohoo all over the house.
They just say woohoo?
Yeah, it's what they call sexual intercourse. Is woohoo. Everything's blurred and they just, I don't know, woohoo.
Just like in real life.
Everything blurs out and everybody says woohoo.
Yeah.
It's biblically correct. So I feel like especially what they say about like the varied possibilities of play, that is something that really interests me about the game. And just this like kind of push and pull between what the game allows players to do and then what the players do with that. And like what you can get away with without any real world consequences is really interesting. Like what Sivonen is talking about, and just like torturing Sims, like especially within the game, it's like you're not gonna get kicked off a server if you kill your Sim, or, you know, the game's not gonna end. Like, you know, your Sim's gonna die, but there's no like actual social consequences to what you're doing in the game. And I think that's really interesting. I've been thinking a lot, especially about like child gamers, partly because I played it as a kid, and then partly because like my research in my master's was about like how kids interact with texts. And I think it's really interesting how like on the surface, Sims seems to want to teach kids about like the American dream and how to be like a good little capitalist and everything. But like kids have their own inner worlds and motivations and desires, and the mostly endless options for gameplay allow them to explore this again without any social consequences in the same way as like in the real world. So the game is still controlling like what those options are, but it gives kids the agency to like work with what they're already wanting to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. This is so interesting. And this idea that kids will play with a toy in the quote unquote right way, just because that's how you tell them to play with a toy, that's so unrealistic given how chaotic children are. And listening to you describe the numerous ways to kill your Sims, me as an adult, I'm like, oh my God, no. That's everything is alive. I can't even get rid of a stuffed animal because it's alive. But maybe normal kids don't think that way. They just destroy everything. Like my the pleasure that my tiny chaos Muppets get from like running around the house, like blasting and destroying things without any sense of like adult repercussions. It absolutely lines up with like, oh, let's take away the ladder. Oh, look, they're going to die.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting too is that like that's not in the game manual or anything. So it is kind of like a word of mouth thing where like one kid figures out that they can like, kill their sim through like a gerbil infection.
Infection?
They tell their friends. Yeah, I think it's like hamsters or gerbils. Like if you don't clean the cage.
It was gerbils, I'm pretty sure, or guinea pigs.
Guinea pigs, yeah. Guinea pigs, yeah.
It was like, it ended up becoming this like sort of viral trend where like somebody found out that you could do this, and then people were like all over the place were reproducing this like guinea pig outbreak in their own Sims games.
That's wild.
Yeah. So it's like these like channels of communication or like, among friends that are like figuring out these ways to like make your Sims lives miserable. And then you're like collectively figuring it out rather than the game makers giving any sort of information like that.
Yeah. So what really struck me as I was reading more about The Sims was how many people come back to this central tension between like the cookie cutter capitalist lifestyle that the game is built around, and then the subversive possibilities enabled in the gameplay itself, including the enormous modding community, right? Because as you said, Ruth, like players start sharing information, players also start sharing like cheat codes and mods and like stuff that you can like import in your game to let your characters wear different kinds of clothes or like add different aesthetics into your houses. Like that becomes huge. And for a lot of players, it seems like the pleasure lies not just in not doing what the game wants you to do, but specifically in the game's overt adherence to conventional ideas about what success or happiness looks like, and the player's ability to transgress those conventions. Okay, Ruth, could you read this quote for us? This is from Hannah Verman and Rhys Jones' article, Let's Play Performance as Transgressive Play.
Okay. Quote, as a sandbox game, The Sims 3 provides players with numerous tools to create avatars, or Sims, and actively manage or merely observe their lives in player-set or pre-created environments. Considering transgression in such an open world is best based on the game's theme and everyday settings. Everyday settings not only allow for easy adoption of the mechanics of the game, but also imply the significance of applying specific values, norms, and rules from the largely North American cultural context that is represented in the game. As such, The Sims 3 offers the possibility to explore and experience lives not available for the player elsewhere, while revisiting and challenging the known ideological structures absent in the otherwise familiar environment. The freedom and safety to explore forbidden play or brink play allow for a variety of socially or morally unacceptable activities to be exercised in the game. End quote.
Beautifully done. So this is a concept that I kept coming back to as I was researching about The Sims, this idea of what is referred to as transgressive play or forbidden play or brink play, as they say here. I like forbidden play the most. But specifically in the context of The Sims, because the logics of the game are about like North American capitalist models of success, like what's forbidden really works against those logics of success. So if we go back to the Dianes and their article, The Sims, Real Life as Genre, they argue that the overarching genre of The Sims is shared notions of real life that create a kind of horizon of possibility that players might then enthusiastically subvert. So they describe one girl who used the face customization feature where you could like import photographs of people to make your Sims look like
Creepy.
them. She used it to give a Sim her ex-boyfriend's face and then torment him by making him live in a house with no toilet. So he was constantly pissing himself and then having to clean it up.
Oh my God. That's so bleak.
And they conclude that if The Sims has been particularly appealing to young women players, maybe it's not because women love dollhouses, and actually because women like making men piss themselves.
I mean, do we have a clear sense of what girls do with dollhouses? Because I don't know that.
I think they make the dolls piss themselves.
Because, like, I don't know that, like, the stuff that my Barbies did in their Barbie dream house was, like, particularly G-rated, you know? Like,
Right.
But I digress. What I'm hearing here is that not unlike the dollhouse in my room with the door closed, The Sims is a safe space to do fucked up stuff to your ex. That's weird. That sentence didn't come out the way that I planned it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, in part, but especially because it's a space in which you can do stuff that's fucked up in really specific ways. Ways that I think, to wrap our heads around, we could use a little theory.
I consent to this segue.
Ruth, do you consent to this segue?
I consent to the segue, yes.
Great, thank you.
This segment is called The Theory We Need. Hannah, please tell us what theory we need to understand why it's so fun to put your Sims in a pool and watch them drown.
Whew. Okay. So today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite critical texts, Jack Halberstam's The Queer Art of Failure. Halberstam, for folks who don't know, is an American scholar of queer theory and cultural studies. His probably best known or most significant work is his 1998 book, Female Masculinity. But The Queer Art of Failure is my personal fave. The proposition of the book is pretty straightforward. Essentially, he's arguing that if cultural definitions of success are profoundly shaped by capitalism, cis heteropatriarchy, white supremacy, and, all their friends, then perhaps there is some liberatory potential to be found in embracing failure. If the successes of oppressive systems are a trap, then maybe failure is the way out. Ruth, could you read this description of the power of failure for us?
Quote, failure allows us to escape the punishing norms that discipline behavior and manage human development with the goal of delivering us from unruly childhoods to orderly and predictable adulthoods. Failure preserves some of the wondrous anarchy of childhood and disturbs the supposedly clean boundaries between adults and children, winners and losers. End quote.
Beautifully done.
It's so interesting that he seems to be defining failure, at least in part, as refusing or failing to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a failure to progress through life according to dominant narratives of becoming an adult. It reminds me of how so many elder millennials have been like, well, fuck it. I'll never own a home, I guess. I'll just really get into collecting Funko Pops. Like, I've failed at life according to capitalism's rules, I guess, so I'll just go back to being a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we see these moral panics surrounding that failure/refusal to grow up correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And those really tell us something about how important it is from the perspective of power for people to buy into logics of adult success, right? Like the market needs it, white supremacy needs it, heteronormativity needs it. So we need all of these social and cultural and financial systems to shape children from rowdy little anarchists into obedient taxpayers. Marcelle, could you read this next quote?
Yes, absolutely. Quote, Childhood is an essentially queer experience in a society that acknowledges, through its extensive training programs for children, that heterosexuality is not born but made. If we were all already normative and heterosexual to begin with in our desires, orientations, and modes of being, then presumably we would not need such strict parental guidance to deliver us all to our common destinies of marriage, child rearing, and hetero reproduction. If you believe that children need training, you assume and allow for the fact that they are always already anarchic and rebellious, out of order and out of time. End quote. Kind of like how my toddler insists on he-hemming Princess Peach.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, we can connect this back to child autonomy as well, because child autonomy, even when we're talking about something like a video game, it's grounded in the belief that children are people and not just blank slates for the imposition of values and ideas, gender norms, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly, which is why Halberstam is particularly interested in children's movies. He's got a whole chapter about Pixar animation in particular. So a couple of weeks ago, I'm working on the script. I'm sitting at my desk, skimming through the Queer Art of Failure and thinking like, wow, this feels really aligned with the ideas of like transgressive or forbidden play in a game like The Sims, but like in a way that I couldn't quite put my finger on. And then I got to his passage about queer art that, quote, links queerness to a mode of negativity that lays claim to, rather than rejects, concepts like emptiness, futility, ineffectiveness, sterility, unproductiveness. In this work, a queer aesthetic is activated through the function of negation rather than in the mode of positivity. In other words, the works strive to establish queerness as a mode of critique rather than as a new investment in normativity or life or respectability or wholeness or legitimacy, end quote.
Okay, I like this, but I want us to pause and unpack it because that's a dense quote.
So I think what's really crucial here is that when Halberstam is thinking about what it means to reject traditional modes of success, traditional narratives of like growing up and living a good life, he's also thinking about how like essentially queer, like radical queer culture isn't about replacing those with another version of what the good life looks like.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It's not about saying like, no, that's not our version of success. This is our version of success. Because basically the whole idea of success, respectability, normativity, legitimacy, right? Living a life, the right life in the right way, that's just like whatever you sub in for what that looks like, those ideas still are inherently constraining. And so instead, the ideas and aesthetics he's interested in are about like refusal, rejection, ineffectiveness, failure, right? It's about failure. It's about just saying no to the whole idea of there being a model for what success in life looks like and not replacing it with something else.
Okay. I've got it. Thank you. So we're talking here about art that is interested in emptiness and futility. Yes?
Yes.
Keep going.
So to demonstrate what he's talking about, Halberstam turns to the artwork of queer collaborative Spanish artists Cabello/Carceller, which is like how the name is written, Cabello-Carceller, with a slash in between. Specifically, a photographic project where they took pictures of empty swimming pools.
Oh, what an appropriate visual signifier.
Ruth, would you kindly read Halberstam's interpretation of this work?
Quote, the images of vacant swimming pools in these works signify the gulf between fantasy and reality, the subjects and the spaces onto which they project their dreams and desires. When the pool no longer signifies as a marker of wealth and success, it becomes available to queer signification as a symbolic site of failure, loss, rupture, disorder, incipient chaos, and the desire animated by these states nonetheless. In Sin Titulo, Utopia, number 27, 1998-99, we are reminded that the ladders leading into and out of the pool, placed at the top of the pool and rarely descending to the floor, are useless without water. The empty pool becomes a trap for the human body when the water has been emptied out. End quote.
Damn.
Empty pool becomes a trap for the human body when the water's been emptied out.
Damn. Hannah.
So we need air horns.
Epic.
He could literally be describing how people trap and kill their Sims in pools.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in both the art Halberstam is writing about and the game The Sims, swimming pools are like these figures of capitalist success.
Hannah, no, bad.
What?
We need a little music stinger thingy here before you can say your thesis.
Fine.
Okay, Hannah, now you can say it.
Thank you. In The Queer Art of Failure, Jack Halberstam describes queer Spanish artist Cabello Carcer's photographs of empty pools as a rejection of a failed capitalist utopia, describing how, quote, the empty pool becomes a trap for the human body when the water has been emptied out, end quote. In this sentence, he could also be describing one of the most popular ways players of The Sims kill off their Sims by literally trapping them in a swimming pool. In this iconic example of transgressive or forbidden play, players use one of the game's inbuilt indicators of success, the ability to afford a pool, as a mechanism through which they can reject the game's implicit objectives, which are to constantly progress your sim through the appropriate stages of human development, like growing up, getting married, getting a good job, having kids, upgrading your house, acquiring more and fancier material possessions, etc. In both The Queer Art of Failure and The Sims, pools stand in for capitalist success, and their subversion into a trap for the human body points to a deliberate and potentially radical rejection of that model of success. For Halberstam, this rejection is a particularly queer aesthetic mode, one that is rooted not in replacing the cis heteropatriarchal capitalist notion of success with something different, but in refusing it altogether by failing to grow up. What Halberstam calls the wondrous anarchy of childhood is evident in how users interact with The Sims, and not only because a lot of players are or were children. It's because of The Sims' unique combination of conservative genre and open-ended gameplay. The game produces a generic expectation for how a successful life is lived, alongside gameplay and interaction possibilities, including a huge, rowdy modding community that allow for the joyful and deliberate subversion of those generic expectations. In this essay,
But we should also talk about whether The Sims is satire or not. Or to what extent is it satire?
Oh, my God. It's such an interesting question.
Ruth, say more.
I mean, I don't know if I have an answer, but I'm very interested in, like, if it is satire, how does that affect this, like, failure, like the ability to fail if it's all couched in satire?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because Wright has been like kind of squirrely on the question of whether the game is like quote unquote meant to be read as a satire of the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The impression I've gotten is that kind of he tries to have it both ways because on the one hand, part of what makes like teachers and parents like it is like it teaches good values, but then also it's like, well, somebody had to code into the game.
Exactly.
The fact that if there's no toilet, you piss yourself.
Yeah.
That doesn't just happen.
That you can kill your children. Like somebody had to code that possibility that children will die. And that's, that is book banning material right there. Sorry, it's on top of mind. Never mind. Don't worry about it, people. Don't move to Alberta.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
I think also with like trying to have it both ways, like when I think of satire, I also feel like there's kind of like two sides of The Sims, because when you start, you can either play in like a preset neighborhood, they call them, and like there's already family dynamics established with like certain goals, or you can create your own sim family, bachelor pad, whatever. And when you play with these like preset families, there's so much lore with that, but there's like this one starter family called the Goth family. And in Sims 2, Bella Goth, who's like the matriarch, she's like been abducted by aliens from like this guy named Don Lothario's rooftop. And he's engaged to her son, but he's also cheating on her with these two sisters. So it's like a satire of kind of like a soap opera situation. So I feel like it's kind of like if you want to play The Sims, quote unquote, seriously, then you can like create your own neighborhood. Or if you want to engage with this kind of like goofy, like wild storyline, you can do that. But then even within the like make your own Sims, as we've talked about, like you can kill your kids if you want to. So there's all these layers. And I think that's just what interests me.
Yeah. I played The Sims when I was younger, but it had been a very long time. So I downloaded Sims 2 and like created some characters to get a feel for it. I was like going through and sort of creating the specific characters, and there's a place where you can like set the things that they're attracted to and the things that they're repelled by. And under things that they're attracted to or repelled by, you know, it's things like, you know, a good communicator, dresses well, like has a lot of money, right? Like, but then there's also like zombies, werewolves, vampires. And it's like at that point in the game, there's been absolutely no indication that this is a world where zombies exist. So it's just like, okay, so I guess this person's turned on by zombies. Will that come up? Which like, I think does add some like interesting tension into this idea of like the genre is real life. Because like, yeah, kind of, you know, like the gameplay is like about progressing through life and like, you know, you have to like pay your rent and get a job and like there's all of that stuff. But also there's a lot of supernatural stuff. There's a lot of other genres being pulled in, right? There's soap opera, there's supernatural, there's horror, there's all of these humor elements built into the game. And it's like, yeah, there's some genre structures for sure, but like you as a player really get to immediately start fucking with them the second you're in.
I think those features are from like expansion packs as well. And so it's like the expansion packs are all playing with different genres and they're layering on top of each other. So it's like almost like this idea of accumulation and excess in the sense of like buying as many expansion packs as you can. It also like blurs the lines between the genres and just like creates this like weird world where you don't even know like what genre you're working in or
Yeah. I was reading about the expansion packs because that is absolutely a like an increased characteristic of the game. So like the first Sims had 7 expansion packs. Sims 2 had 8 expansion packs. Sim 3 had 11 expansion packs. Sim 4 had 18 expansion packs and 12 additional downloadable game packs that are like expansion packs, but with their own gameplay built into them. And one of those 12 game packs was called Star Wars Journey to Bantu, where you could play Sims in the Star Wars world.
I'm sold.
Yeah, I want to play that.
Apparently, fans were furious because they were like, we don't want a shitty spin-off game. We want more stuff we can do with our Sims in our actual worlds that we are building. So they were like, what are you doing giving us all of these alien races when like there's still only like 4 dark skin tones you can give your characters in the original game, and also you haven't built in bunk beds yet. Like, like even as they try to brand it, people are like, no, actually, that's not what we want. What we want is ever-increasing possibilities for our own modification within our worlds that we're building.
Mhm.
Hence the modding, right?
Yeah. And like, I think it just makes me think of, again, like being able to work within the sandbox, but then the game is still kind of controlling what the limits of that are and like how players are negotiating that. Because like, I think in 2022, so like 3 years ago, that was like the first time that they added like mobility aids for Sims. So like before,
2022?
like there were no disabled, you know, like you couldn't have a visibly disabled Sim
Right.
in the game until like 3 years ago. And like they have, you know, you can create like a genderqueer Sim, but that was, I'm assuming, all because players were advocating for this and not because the game was like, actually,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. And like by virtue of, something I find really interesting about the modding community and how big it got so quickly is that, again, part of that was a choice on the part of the game designers to make the game moddable. Because not all games are, right? Like you have to actually let your players access the code of the games in such a way that they can add shit into it themselves. And that is less and less part of how we interact with the internet.
yeah.
Right? That like we interact with black box devices that aren't hackable or moddable or interactive at a like hardware level. We interact with apps that direct our interaction with them and have no possibilities for sort of player experimentation or sort of resistant use within them. We interact with algorithms that tell us what we're allowed to see rather than letting us decide what we see, right? Like, and all of this is about selling people shit, obviously. And so in contrast to that, The Sims kind of has this logic built into it of like the sort of original fantasy of the internet, which was like about sort of radical human agency in relation to what, like the sort of hacker community, right? That like whatever it is you see, you can also change. Whatever it is you're interacting with, you also get to like do something with that thing too. You're not just fed it. And it's like, even as they're trying to sell people the like more and more expansion packs and more other shit, it's like there are these modding communities just being like, no, we're going to make the stuff we want. I want to anime skin all of my characters, and so we're going to build mods for that. Or I want to have like a cool goth sex dungeon, so we're just going to like, there's apparently the goth community loves The Sims. There's like a huge number of goth mods.
Delightful.
It's really interesting that there's this sort of, in terms of how the player communities have emerged. Like, yes, there is this acquisition of the expansion packs, but also there's like, at this point, people have been so trained to believe that they get their own control over these games that it's like, it's hard to then wean a whole player community off that.
Totally.
All right, guys, can I introduce you to my new line of merch for kids that I've made based on this episode?
Yes, please.
I consent.
Cool, great. If you would just,
I also consent.
If you would just scroll to the very end of this document, you'll see the new kids shirts and onesies design that I'm proposing, embracing the possibilities of childhood chaos.
Yes.
So everybody listening right now, look for your kids' line of "The empty pool becomes a trap for the human body when the water has been emptied out" shirts coming soon to a Target near you.
Incredible. Incredible.
Sorry, not just shirts, but also onesies. If you want that on a onesie, if you want your baby, if you want to keep your baby chaotic and make sure that they also know that the empty pool becomes a trap for the human body when the water has been emptied out, you can put that right on your baby.
Thank God. Thank God. Material Girls is a Witch Please production and is distributed by Acast. For a thrilling virtual simulation of listening to this podcast, why don't you head on over to owitchplease.ca for transcripts, reading lists, and merch, as well as our other shows, Gender Playground, a podcast about gender-affirming care for kids, and Making Worlds, a video podcast about sci-fi, fantasy, and the radical power of imagining otherwise.
You can also check out ohwitchplease.substack.com to read our excellent newsletter, or patreon.com/ohwitchplease to check out all our excellent bonus content. We're also on Instagram and YouTube at ohwitchplease. Hey, Ruth, anything to plug?
I do have a website because I am a graphic designer. So, yeah, I work on books, posters, games, all kinds of things. So,
yeah, Ruth co-designed the poster for our live show.
I know. It's so exciting.
I did. Yeah, it was very fun. So ruthormist.com, that's RUTHORMIST.com is where my portfolio is. And I want to do more projects in the fall. So you can check that out if you need graphic design. Graphic design is my passion. And then I'm on Instagram also at Ruth Ormist. I mostly just post about knitting and fiber arts and stuff. So
yeah, all of our listeners who are into knitting, and I assume that that's a really significant
I also assume that, which is why I mentioned it.
Yeah. Follow Ruth because they do a lot of very fun knitting projects.
Cool.
I love it. I love to knit. I love to talk about knitting.
Our show is produced by Hannah Rehack, aka Coach. Thanks to the whole Witch Please Productions team, Gabby Iori, Zoe Mix, Malika Gumpenkam, and Ruth Ormiston. And thanks to Auto Syndicate for the use of our theme song, Shopping Mall.
At the end of every episode, we will thank all our new Patreon supporters and every member who has boosted their tier. When we say we would never trap you in a swimming pool, we really mean it. Our enormous gratitude goes out to Sarah R., Tasha, 5, Elysial 5, Jacqueline G., Alex M., This Is That, Cecilia, Ashley R.G., Mona H., and Pamela F. Thank you all so much. We'll be back next week with something else you can listen to. But until then,
Later, simulators.